Hi everyone, it's Nancy at Sipping and Painting Hampden, and today we're going to be painting this beautiful painting called Cup of Tea. This is an easy painting, so if you're just beginning, I think you're really going to like one. All right, so I have my three basic brushes: large flat, a medium flat, a small round. Basically, if you just have a variety of brushes, you'll be good. I have just a few colors. I'm going to only be using yellow, blue, black, and white. That's it. Easy painting. I have a 16 by 20 canvas, and it doesn't really matter what size canvas you use. Just make sure that your brushes are the right size, proportionate to your canvas. I'm going to pick up my largest brush and I'm going to water on my canvas. The reason I do that is that I'm painting in Denver, and Denver's a very, very dry place, and especially in the winter. This is winter. So when I do that, it just adds a little hydration to the canvas, and that'll make it easier to paint. All right, so this color is basically, it's a phthalo blue kind of color, and you don't have to remember that, but basically what it means is it has blue, it has a little bit of green in it too, and we're going to make a background color, and then we'll make a second shade that's really similar with just a pinch of yellow in it. I probably have enough to paint 5 paintings on this with this palette. This is not going to take a lot of paint. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some white. I'm going to put that in a little pile somewhere. Then I'm going to pick up some blue, and I probably need more white than blue. And then I think I'm going to take the tiniest amount of yellow. Now the amount of yellow that I picked up is about the size of a ladybug. It's so little, it might not even be obvious in my paint. But I want this color to be a light blue, but just with the tiniest hint of yellow in it. So a lot of white, half as much blue, and then just the tiniest amount of yellow, just to give it a little more interest. All right. Might need a little bit more blue. Okay. So what I'm going for is just a light blue, and I'm going to cover most of the background of the painting with that color. In fact, I think I'll do the whole background with it, and then I can touch it up with some lighter colors as I go. So I'm just going to paint my painting with this light blue. And you can see actually that there's this tiny hint of yellow that didn't mix in perfectly, and that's fine. Now my paint's feeling a little thick, so anytime your paint feels a little thick, dip your brush in water and just get a drop or two of water and add that in, and that'll help keep your paint thin. And when your paint is thin, like pancake syrup, when it's like that, then it's easy to work with. If it's thick like peanut butter or Greek yogurt, it's just a little too thick to put on a thin background layer. So that's still feeling a little bit thick. So I picked up a couple more drops of water, just a little tiny bit, and it's just going to help smooth it out. I can go in either direction. It doesn't really matter, but I am going to have to make a whole lot more paint. So I'm going to do that some white, about half as much blue, then a tiny little speck of yellow. So I'm just mixing more of that together on my palette. Just a little bit. And if you don't mix it exactly the same color, not only is that not a problem, it's pretty cool actually. That's a good thing, because this painting has several different shades of blue that are look like they're made the same. So I think the original artist may have mixed up several batches, and they're all slightly different. This blue is slightly different than this blue, slightly different than that one. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want it to have some visual interest. We don't want it to look flat. And so by having those slight changes in the color, just by mixing it new several times, that's just going to make the painting more interesting. We don't want it to look too flat. Now, my canvas is very dry, very dry. It's a cold day outside, so that makes sense. When it's cold, it just makes my canvas really feel dry. So I'm adding a little water and just trying to move around more of that paint so I don't have to just keep making more and more and more. Although that's why it's there, so why not? You don't want it so thin that it drips. But pancake syrup, that's a good consistency. Gonna keep mixing a little more. And I like how this is giving me a slightly different blue every time. That's just going to make this a more interesting painting. In fact, what the heck, this one doesn't have any yellow in it. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Why not? I like this slight variation in color. It just makes it so much more interesting, but they're very close to the same. Light blue with or without just the tiniest amount of yellow. And it's just giving me these interesting colors and textures to do it that way. So where my paint is the light blue that's got a tiny bit of yellow, and then the light blue that doesn't have a tiny bit of yellow, in the exact places that I put mine, you don't have to put the same thing, but just go back and forth between them so that you get this kind of two-tone look in your painting. I'm mixing more. In other words, I keep trying for about the same color, but each time it's just a little different. Just a little different. And that's okay. I'm trying for the same thing, but I like that it's not perfect every time. That's going to make this painting so much more interesting. Ooh, that's a nice little streak of green. And what it looks like when you do that, to have the paint vary a little bit. Now, you wouldn't want to do this in your whole house on the walls, right? You'd want your paint to match. But to do it on a painting, what it shows in the painting without even really trying is that there's reflected light in the room where this teacup is. And that reflected light is casting reflections on the background, assuming that the background is all one perfectly uniform color. And it's suggesting that there's light bouncing around in the room there, which is pretty cool if you ask me. In other words, it's a happy accident. Isn't that cool? All right. And actually, I think the word happy accident, the phrase happy accident, I think that's copyrighted by the Bob Ross Company. This is not a Bob Ross painting. However, I do teach Bob Ross paintings here at the studio. Those are 6 hours long. So when the pandemic's over, do consider taking one of those with me. We're not doing them during the pandemic because I don't want to be in the room with anyone for 6 hours, and I'm sure that's mutual. But hopefully in a few short months, pandemic will be under control and we can get our Bob Ross classes started again. Oops, must have hit a pile of blue there by mistake, but that's okay. That's okay, that's more of what I was talking about, remember? I'll just blend it in. So this way I get shades of reflected light. And that's exactly what I was going for. Exactly what I was going for. All right, now if you want to paint around the tops and the sides and the bottom, like up here, you can do that. That's totally your call. When you do that, that is called a gallery wrap. And what that means is if you have a gallery wrap, then you don't have to put it in a frame. So that's going to save you some money. So if I pick this up carefully and paint the bottom and the sides, then it won't need a frame. And I will be ahead financially if I don't have to buy a frame, right? So that's good. It just gives it a more finished look. And you can do it, it's not hard to do that. It's real easy, in fact. So you don't have to fuss over it. Just kind of put it on quick, and it doesn't have to be perfect on the sides. Not too many people are going to be staring at the sides of your painting. So I'm almost done with that. What I mean is if it's slightly different color than what's next to it, it doesn't matter. All right. So I have the top, I have the sides, I have the bottom, and now I'm going to let this dry a few minutes. Like I said, this is a pretty easy painting. I'm liking how it has these different shades in it. I do see that there's a little bit of lighter in through there, so I might just pick up a little bit, just a tiny amount of white, like a ladybug, put it in some very watered down blue. Oops, picked up some black, didn't mean to do that. Very watered down blue. Gonna add more water, more white. And I'm just going to put a little bit more white here and here to match that painting. Just a little more sparkle. It's almost reminds me of maybe there's a light reflecting through a window or through window curtains or something, kind of giving it that streaky look. It's very subtle. So you might not even be able to see it, but just a little tiny bit of color change in the center. Just a little bit. All right. Now, there are some gray zigzags or scribbles in here. And again, that's just adding a little visual interest to the painting. So I can go ahead and do that while it's still wet. I'm going to pick up my medium brush this time. And I'm going to pick up the tiniest amount of black, teeny tiny, and then a little more white. I might need to go get some more white, in fact. But I got a little white, a little black. And I made a light gray. This gray is so light, it's supposed to look like silver. Very light gray, okay? And then it's just this silver. Again, I'm not quite sure why it's here, but it is. First, it looks like it's streaked on here a little bit. And then it looks like it's streaked all the way down the center. And I think this is just, you know, like I said, giving a little visual interest to this painting, a little reflected light, a little mystery. So I've got little streaks going on. There's some going on down here too. And then I'm going to go back and forth like this, because in that painting, that's what it looks like they did. There's the streaks go back and forth. Not sure why, but it's just adding a little mystery to the painting. A little mystery. Little detail I don't understand, but that's okay. And you know, mine's a little light. I might be able to come back in and do a little bit more with something a little darker. I think I will, just to be sure that you can see it. But that's the general idea. It's just creating a little texture and mystery and visual interest. You can see that better, I'm sure. I'm not even sure why this color is in there. Just adding a little mystery. That was a little too neat. Mess it up a bit. I don't want to cover too much of my blue because I love that blue. And this is like a gray. It'll make it much less vibrant. So I don't want to overdo it. I might have already overdone it. Who knows? Every time you paint, it's going to turn out a little different. All right. No idea what those are, and I don't even care. Be sure to always clean your brushes really well, okay? And if that was too much or you don't like it, remember what you can do. You can always pick up a little blue, a little white, and you can let that dry and cover it up. There is no limit to what you can do to cheer up your painting or to put in anything that just makes you feel good, because it really, that's the whole thing. That's really the point. That was looking a little too depressing, that color there. So I'm going to brighten it up with a little tiny bit of off-white, and it's a white with a tiny bit of blue in it. But see, you can do whatever you want. It's your painting. You just do what feels good. Trust your gut. You don't have to think it. Don't overthink it. Just have fun with it. Just have fun. And just do what feels good to you. Because why not? That's what I love about painting, is you get to have your personality come through, and you get to just relax and do what feels good to you. Where else in life can you do that? Can't do that as much at work. Maybe a little depending on your job, but in general, there's nothing as freeing and liberating and just plain relaxing as painting, and that's what I think. Just do whatever feels good. Okay. All right, I think I've done enough. It's still a lot darker than that, and that's not what I intended. But, you know, it is what it is. Maybe. It's a good idea to step back about 20 feet from your painting and just take a look at it from a distance, because, not 20 feet, sorry, 10 to 15 feet is good. If you can't, if your room's not that big, or, you know, maybe you have to step on your porch, just 5 to 10 feet is fine. It doesn't really matter. Just try to get some distance on it. See it from across the room. However big your room is, step to the other side of your room. See it from across the room and see what it looks like. I had the good fortune of my husband and I finally had our kids finish school, and we decided to go on a trip, just the two of us, to celebrate having raised our children, our 3 sons. And so we spent a week in Paris. That was our celebration. And that was last year and a half ago. And the thing that amazed me was how terrible the master's art looked up close. If you stood really close to it, it looked terrible, the impressionistic work. But the amazing thing is, when you looked at it from a distance, it was stunning. And what that taught me is always step back, always step back. Paintings aren't meant to be seen when you have your nose at them. They're not meant to be seen from, you know, a foot away or 2 feet away. They're meant to be seen from 5, 10 feet away, and they will look different. The impressionistic paintings will look 100 times better when it's 5 to 10 feet away. So that's always a good idea. Step back, see your painting from farther away before you decide if you like it. And you're probably wondering, why does she keep messing with this? Well, I'm looking at the original and I'm just going until it feels right to me. But yours may have felt right to you already. And if that's the case, I'll be done soon. You can take a little break, but I'm just adding a little bit more green. I'm just kind of playing, and when it feels right, I'll know it's right. This still looks dark to me, but I'm figuring it out, and that's a good thing. When you add a little white or a little yellow to your painting, it adds light. It adds light. And this was very watered down yellow because I don't want to change the background color of the painting, but I just want to give it a little bit more of a glow. And that's why I used a tiny bit of yellow with some white and water, just to give it a few brighter spots. I could even go in the brighter spots in here and break up some of that. Maybe it wouldn't look so dark. Anyway, I want to try not to combine all my colors. I don't want to overblend, then I'll just have brown. But all right, this is probably good enough. Okay, anyway, textured background, we're good to go. Now, mine is mostly dry and I'm just going to keep right on going. You see this branch here? That branch is made with a combination of blue and black. So I'm going to take mostly blue and I'm going to add a little bit of black. And I don't know why the branch is blue and black. It just is, and I'm going to honor the original artist by painting it that way. And then it has these beautiful white, gray, and yellow blossoms. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to, using a small round brush, and I'm going to more pressure at the base because that would be where the bigger branch is, right? Keep your brush wiggling. An easy way to do that is kind of spin it in your fingers as you go. You want an imperfect looking branch. Imperfect, wiggly, bumpy, because that's how they'd really look in nature. There's nothing perfectly straight about nature. And then this splits, goes in different directions. I'm always starting in the trunk and then I pull out, because then I get the sharper, pointier lines when I do that. Start in the trunk and then twist and pull your brush so you get bumpy lines. Start in the trunk, come through the branch, spin your brush a bit. Start in the trunk, come out of the branch. Now mine doesn't have to look exactly like hers, right? This one's gonna be smaller, thinner. Just kind of come down. But let the end of the brush just kind of fall off, like flick up, so that you get a sharp, not a sharp line, but a pointier end to it. Through the branch, and then wiggle, 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 wiggle. Mine doesn't look exactly like hers, but that's not what I'm going for. I'm not looking for exact anything. I'm just looking for something that respects the original painting so that it's obvious that it was inspired by it. It doesn't have to be a duplicate of it to be inspired by it. She must have had a smaller, finer brush than I have, and that's okay. I'm not getting those really delicate lines. Oh, there he did. I had a little water and voila. Got a little smaller, delicate line. All right, I think that's good enough. All right, maybe this is someone sitting out in their backyard and enjoying their cup of tea in their backyard. Just changing the lighting a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to take, remember that gray we made before? If you can still find any of that, if there's any wet, or add a drop of water to it, see if you can wake up that gray. I don't want to waste more paint because I don't have much white left. I'm just going to take a little bit of that gray, and then I'm going to, on the ends and around the tip of the each branch, I'm just going to tap on some gray. And that gray is basically just going to be a basis, something to give some contrast to the white that we're going to pop on in a second. So I'm just taking that gray that I used before. I'm tapping randomly around each one of the ends of these branches. And this is like the background of the foliage, like the shadow of the blossoms. But we put the shadow on first. These, yeah, those weren't good blobs because they started to separate. My paint was a little too thick, but I had a drop of water. Now it's more like ink, and that's what I want. These little blobs, little pops. And I do it around the ends of each one of these branches. More around the bigger branches, less around the smaller. And that's the shadows behind the blossoms. All right, nice. Now, my white, or my yellow rather, is, depends on the kind of paint you use, but my yellow is kind of a wimpy yellow. So I'm going to take a little bit of my white, I'm going to mix it into my yellow, just so my yellow has more body. And just by adding a little white to a little, to some of my yellow, that white is going to, that yellow is going to show up more. Yellow is a more transparent color, a more transparent pigment, and white is a more opaque. And what that means is it's thicker, it has more stick-to-itiveness. It's like the difference between milk and toothpaste, right? So I add a tiny bit of white to my yellow, and it's going to stick better. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with these pops of yellow around the branches. It's okay that that gray is there. It's okay. I'm just not making them exactly perfect where the gray is. They're just coexisting and not even concerned about where the gray is. Just putting on yellow in and around, maybe on top of, but not covering up the gray. That's not my intent. It's a fun little painting and it's easy. No matter what how you paint this, it's going to be pretty and you're going to like it, I suspect. Just a nice, easy painting. Good for beginners. Because you saw how I put on that background. There was a lot of doing your own thing in it, which was good. I like that. That always makes for a nice painting. It's when you're a beginning painter, or if you just want to relax and not work too hard, just relax. You want to avoid things like people and animals and just do a nice little nature painting, because trees will always look like a tree and flowers will always look like some kind of flower, even if you mess them up. Not so with people and animals, they're just harder. So now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to put little white blossoms. Some of them are right on top of the others, but do I care? Not at all. That's random. I'm definitely gonna have to go get some more white. So I need it for that tea bag. And I probably have more blossoms than they had in their painting, but you know what? That's what I do. I'm kind of one of those painters that always make things more abundant. I had a friend, there was a Facebook thing, and it said, you know, you're supposed to ask your friends to describe you in one word. And one of my friends that's known me for years and years, her word for me was abundant. And I always think of that when I paint trees and flowers, because I always overdo it. I always put on too many leaves and too many flowers. And then I think of her post and think, she nailed it. She nailed it. One of those people, if I invite you over to my house, there will be too much food. I learned once a very long time ago how not to do that. When I was probably 20, I had a party and didn't make enough food. And boy, now I always make twice as much. I never want to do that again. But now I know how. Okay, so I've got my blossoms on there, and yes, they're brighter and bolder than hers. That's okay. No worries. That's kind of fun. Mine definitely has a lot more color than hers. Mine has more yellow. That's not a bad thing, but I can add a little bit more white. I want to make it more honoring her intent. But again, you know, you do you. You paint the way you see the world. Everyone sees the world differently, and that's what's so beautiful about painting. Only you see the world the way you see it. And when you paint a painting, that's a gift, because other people get a little glimpse into how you see the world. And that's really, to me, that's the most beautiful thing about painting, is looking at other people's paintings and go, wow, that is interesting, or that's really cool, and that's unique. I never would have thought of that. Or, wow, I painted a painting like that once and I just did it totally different. I love that about the studio. We have 7 or 8 different artists that work here at a time when things are open. Right now it's pandemic, so we're not open to in-studio classes, but when we are, we have a lot of different artists that work day jobs, and then they come here and teach for us evenings and weekends. And I love seeing how unique each one of them see the world, for one, and how they paint differently. I can paint from the same inspiration painting, same one, and we do this all the time, and I'll have a totally different way to attack that painting. And I say attack, but it's really not attack, it's approach. That's the word I'm looking for, to approach how to do it. They might start with the background first and then, you know, jump to the foreground, then go back to the background a bit. You know, it's just, everyone has their own way of doing it, and their own way of mixing colors, and it's fun to watch. All right, that's a lot of blossoms. She doesn't have anywhere near that many, but that's all right. That, like I said, that's my personality. That's what I do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this cup, clean, small brush, I'm going to draw it on first, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This one is not perfect. It is not measured. It's just not measured. So I'm just going to freehand it. And I'm going to take my time, but it's not going to be perfect. I already know that. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to start, it's about the middle of the painting, and then it goes to the right, and it's about 3 fingers up from the bottom on this canvas. But you're going to have to eyeball it on your canvas. So I'm just going to do my bravery test. Now here's the thing. You can paint yours on in white if you want, and then when you get the shape that you want, then go in and fill it in black. That's what I would recommend. So instead of painting this in black, do it in white first, and then look at it and say, do I like it? Does it look good? And then let that black dry, and then go over it, or the white dry, and then go over it in white. I'm being a little cocky here and Maybe I'm going to regret it, but I went for the black. But I would recommend for beginning painters, if you really care about that being perfect or close to perfect, maybe you're giving it as a gift to your mom or your grandma or something, you really want it to, you know, be an even Steven kind of cup. Paint it on, outline it in white first, and then come back. And I'm doing this handle. This is a half of a heart. You see that? Half of a heart. It almost looks like an ear, but it doesn't have a lobe. It just comes right down. Half of a heart. See that? Half of a heart. And then the saucer comes out from the side of the painting and it goes to a point. And then it comes down in a curve to the same spot on the other side, ends at a point, and then comes back in. Is that perfect? Far from it. Far from it. You could take your time, do it with white, make it perfect. That is your choice. I want this to be more impressionistic and loose, and I am definitely not making it perfect. Just don't even want to. And then I'm going to fill it in with black. I'm not going to fill this in though. That's the handle, okay? Don't fill that in. But just the cup and the saucer, fill it in. And then we'll put little white outlines where we need to after the black dries. This painting would be a very nice gift for someone that you love that drinks tea. I have been drinking a lot of tea this winter. Our son got us an electric teapot, which I thought was a silly idea until I got one. And now I don't know what I'd do without it, because now I just drink a lot more herbal tea. And that's a good thing, because I'm a coffee drinker and I don't drink enough water. But with an electric teapot, you plug it in and then it's ready. And then all you do is hit one button and then it heats up in about 30 seconds. So it doesn't use the gas, all the gas that my stove does. And it's very fast. And I tell you, I can't believe how much I love that thing. And I thought it was going to be silly. All right, and then a little scribble underneath. They put a little scribble shadow underneath the cup. My cup's bigger. Remember I told you I'm all about abundance? There you go. So they put a little scribble underneath the teacup for the shadow. And since that's a little teacup, it's got a little shadow. I have a gigantic teacup. That's what I do. All right. After you paint a bunch, you're going to figure out that your style. It didn't take me long to figure out that my style is abundance. I grew up in a family of 9 kids. I was the middle. And I think what I learned from that experience was abundance. As long as I have my black paint on, I'm going to go ahead and put my initials in the bottom left-hand corner, like the original artist did, Kelly Doak. And I'm going to let this dry. And I have to let it dry because I need to put in this line across the top. Notice how that cup curves up. When you make your cup, don't make it flat, make it curve up. That's the other side of the rim, it curves up. And then this side of the rim curves down. It's like a mirror image of that top. But we'll have to wait until this is dry to get that lower curve on. And then we'll also have to let it dry to put on this white line that separates the cup from the saucer. And I just looked at that curve and I'm thinking, oh, I can make it a little more curvy just to make sure that it's curvy. But I gotta stop myself before I try to make it perfect and then my cup is the size of the canvas. I would totally do that. All right, so I'm gonna let this wait a few minutes. So I've got to make a white line there, defining the bottom of the cup. See that? And then one here defining the top of the cup. And notice that one doesn't go over all the way, and neither does that one. You're seeing the highlight of the line on the sunny side of the cup. And this just disappears into the shadow. That's what tells me it's an impressionistic painting, that you just see simple lines suggesting things. Now this isn't dry, but I'm feeling gutsy, so I'm gonna try it. I would recommend that you wait a little longer, okay? All right. Take your time. And then if you don't like it, let it dry, cover it with black. No problem. You can always fix things. Now that's too much. It kind of looks like a hat. But when I put on a tea bag, I'm hoping it looks less like a hat. And I'm gonna, oh man, those. I'm gonna take this down a little bit. See that? More shadow. I had a black blob. Oh well, that's okay. Something not right about that saucer though. Saucer looks like a football. That's kind of bothering me, but I gotta figure out what to do differently before I touch it. It shouldn't be pointy at the end. I think that's it. Or maybe it's too large. Here's the thing. This is where it helps to step away and look at it from a distance. I'm going to go ahead and show you that tea bag. It's pretty easy from this side of the lid. Notice how I'm taking my pinky and I'm setting it on this side in where it's dry. And I'm just going to have a little string coming down from that lid. And then I'm going to draw a little rectangle. And this is a big cup of coffee, so it needs a big old tea bag, right? Big cup of tea. I am a big coffee drinker, so for me to switch to tea a lot is something. All right. And now here's the fun thing. If you want, if you're going to give this to as a gift, maybe to your grandma or your mom or something, it'd be fun to get a label of their tea bag and copy the label as best you can. Not perfect, but just kind of copy what you see on the label, and they'll recognize it and they'll think that's a hoop, I think. So let's say this one has a square in it. I don't know what kind of brand that would be, but it's got a square. Got a little yellow in the square. Yellow over black is not a good look, but it just suggests that there's something else going on in that tea bag, not just white. I'm going to step back and see mine from 5 feet because I can't see it from here. Too close. All right, well, it's a giant cup of tea, but I'm good with it. Remember, this is an easy painting. Don't obsess about it being perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. That was never the intent. Just relax and enjoy it. Enjoy those blossoms. Enjoy those blossoms. Just relax and enjoy the painting and don't worry about anything being perfect at all. All right. Now I gotta take my own advice and call it a day. Maybe I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of color. Nope. I gotta leave it alone. I'm gonna just fix that corner. All right, leave it alone. That's it. Thank you so much for joining me in painting my interpretation of Kelly Doak's painting called Cup of Tea. I hope you had fun painting with me, and I hope now you'll go enjoy a relaxing cup of hot tea on this cold winter day. Thanks. Cheers.